My name is Marissa Alden, 34 years old. I've always believed that peace is something you build slowly, choice by choice, moment by moment. Mine came in the shape of a modest two-story house by Lake Tahoe. Quiet beige walls, clean lines, sunlight that softened everything it touched. It was the first thing in my adult life that felt entirely mine. I'd worked as a financial analyst for years, saving every spare dollar until the day I signed the deed with shaking hands and a sense of victory humming in my blood. The house became my refuge, a place where no one talked over me, no one borrowed my things without asking, no one compared me to my younger sister, Abby, the golden child who never faced consequences. I didn't go there every week, but knowing it existed, untouched, waiting for me, was sometimes enough. So when my phone rang that Tuesday morning, I didn't expect my world to shift. I didn't expect that one call would shatter the fragile distance I'd created between myself and the family who never really saw me. "Hey, Mar," Abby chirped as if we'd just finished laughing together. She was the only one who called me that. I hated it. "I've got news." I remember balancing my coffee mug in one hand, my laptop warming my knees. "Okay, what's up?" "We're moving into your Lake Tahoe house tomorrow." The words didn't register at first. They hovered there, absurd, impossible. When they sank in, I nearly dropped my coffee. "I'm sorry, what?" "Yeah," she breezed on. "Rent here is insane. We can't afford it anymore. Your place is perfect. You barely use it, so it makes sense, right? Oh, and I already fixed some stuff." "Fixed?" My voice sounded far away. "Mm-hmm." The dining room wallpaper was boring, so I changed it. Silver metallic, very modern. I had the living room sofa reupholstered. "Oh, and I need you to send me $4,200 for the contractors. They're amazing." I set my coffee on the table before my hands could betray me. "Abby, what are you talking about? Who said you could do that?" "Mar, don't be dramatic. Dad gave me the spare key. Mom and Dad think it's a great idea." She laughed. Light, careless, entitled. "We're family. You should help us." Then she hung up. Just like that. An announcement. A bill. A violation dressed up as a favor. My hands shook as I called my mother. She answered with that syrupy tone she used whenever she needed me to agree with something I'd hate. "Yes, sweetheart, Abby told us. It's really the best solution." "For who?" I whispered. "Mom, this is my house." "You hardly use it," she countered. "And Abby has 2 small children." She changed my wallpaper. She reupholstered my sofa. "Well, she's making it more homey. You should see it. It looks lovely." A memory surfaced. Abby borrowing my favorite bracelet for a date and returning it snapped in half. Mom had brushed it aside as an accident. Another memory. Abby taking my car for a weekend and keeping it for 3 months, denting it. Dad had said I was being too sensitive. My entire childhood was a collection of moments where Abby's needs mattered more than my boundaries. "This is different," I said now, my voice thin but steady. "This is my house, my property." "Don't be selfish, Marissa," she sighed. "Abby needs this." I hung up before I lost control. Before I said something I couldn't take back. A buzzing began behind my ribs. Anger, disbelief, something sharper beneath it all. I called Abby again, and this time I hit record on my phone. I knew her too well. I knew what was coming. "Did you talk to Mom?" she asked. "Yes, and my answer is no. You cannot move into my house." "Too late," she replied brightly. "Everything is packed. The wallpaper's up. The sofa's done. We're moving in tomorrow. Send me the money." "Abby, I owe you nothing. It's happening whether you like it or not." Another click. Silence. Something primal stirred inside me. Not rage, but resolve. Cold, steady, unfamiliar. I grabbed my keys. The drive from Reno to Lake Tahoe was 60 minutes, but it felt like 10. Trees blurred past. My heartbeat echoed in my ears. I had prepared myself for damage, for tackiness, for intrusion, but not for the feeling that hit me when I stepped inside. It wasn't my house anymore. It was some grotesque imitation of a home Abby imagined for herself. Shiny, mismatched, loud, invasive. The dining room was covered in blinding metallic wallpaper, reflecting the light so sharply I had to squint. The kitchen had a tacky wine rack drilled into the wall, crooked, with holes around the screws where someone had clearly struggled. The sofa, my beautiful 3-month salary sofa, was upholstered in a chaotic pattern that made my stomach twist. Then I went upstairs to my studio, my sanctuary, and my breath caught in my throat. The walls were painted a glaring, unnatural yellow, a color that swallowed the light instead of reflecting it. My eyes stung. But then I noticed something in the corner, a small black security camera. I had forgotten about them. 6 cameras installed months ago for safety. They recorded automatically. Quiet, objective witnesses to everything. My hands trembled as I opened the app on my phone. There she was, Abby, strutting through the front door like she owned the place, handing out instructions to contractors. I increased the volume. I want the dining room done in silver, something modern, and reupholster that sofa. Marissa's taste is so boring. Another clip, Abby pacing around my living room, phone to her ear. Dad's voice drifted through the audio. Are you sure Marissa's okay with this? When we move in, the house will be ours, Abby laughed. She barely uses it. She'll get over it. A coldness spread through me. Not sadness, not even anger. Clarity. I screenshotted everything. The ruined rooms, the drill holes, the cheap decorations. I backed up all video clips to 3 different storage accounts. I saved the phone call recording of Abby demanding money. Then I locked the house and drove home under a darkening sky, the lake glinting like a silent witness. The next morning, I sat across from a lawyer a coworker had recommended, Mr. Harris, a calm man with sharp eyes and a voice that commanded attention. After I showed him everything, he closed his notebook with a soft click. Miss Alden, he said, your sister's actions constitute trespassing, vandalism, and attempted extortion. The words hung heavily between us. I swallowed. What are my options? Civil suit, he said, or civil and criminal. There was no hesitation inside me. Both. He assessed me quietly. This is the more severe route. It may permanently damage your relationship with your family. I thought of the metallic wallpaper, the sofa, my mother's voice telling me not to be selfish, Abby bragging that my house would be ours. My family damaged it a long time ago, I said softly. He nodded. Then we proceed. I signed the papers. I left the office feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Control. Trembling, thin, but there, pulsing beneath my ribs like a new heartbeat. I knew my choice would detonate something inside my family. But they had lit the fuse. I was just refusing to smother it anymore. I didn't hear from anyone for 4 days. Not Abby, not my parents, not even one of the extended relatives who usually flocked to defend her when she stirred up chaos. It was the kind of silence that hums in your ears, artificial, fragile, waiting to snap. I kept going to work, answering emails, reviewing spreadsheets, pretending everything was normal. But at night, the weight of what I'd started settled deeper into my chest. On the morning of the 5th day, the quiet broke. My phone buzzed nonstop, first with one call from Abby, then another, then 6 more. When I didn't answer, the text began. We need to talk. You're being dramatic. This is ridiculous. Pick up the phone. The messages got angrier as the hour passed. Misspelled bursts of rage, voice notes, where she alternated between crying and demanding, I fix this before it gets worse. I didn't respond. I didn't even open most of them. Then my mother called. The screen lit up with Mom, and my stomach tightened. I could have ignored it, but something inside me needed to hear what she'd say, needed to confirm whether she understood what Abby had done, or whether she was about to twist the knife. I answered. Marissa, she burst out immediately, her voice shrill with panic. What have you done? Abby got a letter from some lawyer accusing her of trespassing and vandalism. How could you let this go so far? I closed my eyes. Mom, it didn't go anywhere. I took legal action because she broke the law. She's your sister. Mom spat the word so sharply it hurt my ear. She needed help, and instead of supporting her, you're trying to have her arrested. She broke into my house, Mom. She had a key. You gave it to her, I snapped. My voice didn't rise often, but this time it did. I didn't. She wasn't invited. She made unauthorized changes and demanded money. Mom went silent, but only for a breath. We're having a family meeting tomorrow, she said, regaining her composure. At the Lake Tahoe house. All of us. We're going to fix this like adults. The irony almost made me laugh. Fine, I said. Tell Abby this is her last chance. If her things are out of my house before I arrive, I'll drop the criminal charges. If not, she'll face real consequences. Mom hung up on me. There was a strange calm that followed, the kind that comes after a storm breaks open the sky. I called Mr. Harris and told him everything. He warned me not to negotiate anything verbally, not to sign a single paper, and to be cautious. They'll try to guilt you, he said quietly. Don't respond emotionally. I almost smiled. Respond emotionally? That was my family's specialty, not mine. The next day, I drove back to Lake Tahoe. The closer I got, the heavier the air felt, as if the trees themselves knew what kind of confrontation waited ahead. When I pulled into the driveway, a large SUV was parked beside my parents' sedan. It was almost comical, as if they'd already claimed the property with their vehicles. I stepped out, heart thudding with a slow, steady rhythm. The house looked the same from the outside, neat, charming, innocent, but the knowledge of what waited inside made it feel like a crime scene. I pushed the door open. They were all there. Abby stood in the living room with her arms crossed, jaw clenched, arrogance balancing on desperation. Jacob sat on the edge of my sofa, the ruined, hideously upholstered one, looking pale and uncomfortable. My mother wiped at her eyes with a tissue, while my father wore the stern expression he saved for moments when he thought I needed discipline. Boxes were stacked in a corner. They had moved in. Dad spoke first. "Marissa, sit down. We need to talk about this lawsuit nonsense." I didn't sit. There is nothing to talk about. Abby needs to leave. "We've already moved in," Abby shot back, her chin lifted, defiant. She always looked like this right before things fell apart for her. "The house is done the way we want it, and we're staying." "This house belongs to the whole family," Mom added. "You can't just kick your sister out." I reached into my bag and pulled out the first document. The deed. Crisp, official, undeniable. I unfolded it with slow, deliberate movements and held it up. "See this name?" I asked quietly. "Marissa Alden. Not you, not Dad, definitely not Abby." Abby scoffed. "A piece of paper doesn't mean anything. We already live here. We fixed it up. You should be grateful." "Grateful," I repeated, my voice flat. "For vandalism?" Dad's eyes tightened. "You're overreacting." I smiled, a thin, humorless curve. "No, this is overreacting." I pulled out the second document. The police statement. The room inhaled sharply, even unintentionally, it seemed. I took a step forward. This lists trespassing, property damage, and attempted extortion. All criminal charges. You, I looked at Abby, and Jacob are legally involved. If you don't leave now, everything moves forward. For a second, the room froze. Then Jacob's face drained of color. "Abby," he whispered, "you told me she said it was okay. You told me she agreed." Abby spun toward him. "She's lying. She's always been jealous." Jacob stood up suddenly, voice rising. "I asked you 3 times. 3 times if she approved. You said yes." Chaos erupted. Abby grabbed his arm, insisting, crying, accusing. Jacob shook her off, voice cracking with betrayal, the first sign of backbone I'd ever seen from him. Mom began sobbing harder, insisting I was destroying the family. Dad told me to stop being vindictive, while glaring as if I were the one who desecrated the home. And me? I didn't move, didn't yell, didn't even blink. I just watched the consequences unfold. Then, a knock on the door. Everything fell silent. I stepped past my family and opened it. 2 police officers stood on the porch, a man and a woman, their uniforms crisp, their expressions professional but stern. "Miss Marissa Alden?" the male officer asked. "Yes." "We're here regarding a criminal complaint you filed. Is Miss Abby Thompson here?" Behind me, Abby's breath hitched. I'm Abby," she said, stepping forward. Her voice trembled. "Miss Thompson," the officer continued, "we need you to come with us to give a statement regarding charges of trespassing and property damage. Everyone except Miss Alden must leave the premises immediately. Any items brought into the residence must remain here. They are potential evidence." Mom let out a strangled cry. Dad shouted something incoherent. Jacob looked like he wanted the floor to swallow him. The officers escorted Abby out. She twisted back toward me, fury and disbelief mixed on her face. "You did this to me," she screamed. "You're ruining my life." I didn't answer. Outside, she kept yelling as they led her to the car, threats, insults, promises of revenge. Her voice cracked, her composure shattered. And then she was gone. My parents stumbled after her, stunned, broken, still insisting I was heartless. Jacob followed silently, not meeting my eyes. The door closed behind them. Silence. I stood alone in the living room, surrounded by silver wallpaper, neon yellow paint, and the remnants of someone else's dream shoved into my world. But for the first time since the nightmare started, I could breathe. The days leading up to the trial felt like drifting through someone else's life, surreal, tense, suspended in a strange emotional limbo. I still went to work, still brewed my morning coffee, still walked the same quiet halls of my apartment. But underneath the routine, a tightness lived in my chest, coiled and waiting. Every time I thought of my house, my violated sanctuary still frozen in its vandalized state for evidence, something inside me twisted. Mr. Harris updated me regularly. Abby had hired a lawyer. My parents were helping pay for it. Of course they were. They'd always rushed to fix her mistakes, cushioning her whenever she fell, even when she jumped willingly off every cliff she found. I didn't expect anything different, but knowing it didn't hurt less. 3 months crawled by before the trial date arrived. 3 months of silence from my parents, save for a few voicemails where my mother alternated between crying and begging me to be reasonable, followed by my father's stiff lectures about family unity and loyalty. I deleted them all without responding. The night before the trial, I barely slept, not because I doubted my decision, I didn't, but because I knew what was coming. My parents' disappointment, Abby's theatrics, the inevitable attempt to make me the villain. I had prepared myself logically, emotionally. That was different. I dressed carefully the next morning. A simple gray suit, clean lines, nothing flashy. Something that made me feel grounded. As I drove to the courthouse, fog clung to the roads, softening the edges of buildings and trees. The world looked blurred, like it hadn't woken up yet. I wasn't sure I had either. When I walked into the courthouse lobby, I spotted Mr. Harris immediately. Tall, composed, papers tucked neatly under one arm. He gave me a reassuring nod. "You ready?" he asked. "As I'll ever be." He led me into the courtroom, and my breath caught. They were already there. My parents sat behind Abby, physically shielding her, as if forming a literal wall of support. Mom clutched a crumpled tissue in her hand, her eyes already red. Dad stared straight ahead with the rigid posture of a man preparing for combat. Abby sat between them, her hair styled neatly, makeup subtle but intentional. The soft, injured look she always used to win sympathy. Jacob wasn't there. I wondered briefly if guilt kept him away, or if he simply didn't want to face the wreckage his wife had created. The bailiff called the court to order, and we all stood. When we sat again, Abby's lawyer, a polished man with a rehearsed smile, began his opening statement. "Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this case is a heartbreaking misunderstanding between sisters, a family dispute that spiraled far beyond what anyone intended. My client, Mrs. Thompson, believed, sincerely, that she had permission to enter her sister's home, permission provided by their own parents. She made improvements to the home for the comfort of her children, thinking she was being practical, even helpful. I listened to him twist reality into something almost unrecognizable. Mom nodded along, her expression a blend of encouragement and pain. Dad stiffened each time Abby's lawyer implied that I had overreacted. Then came Abby's turn on the stand. She walked slowly, hands clasped, lips trembling. When she sat, she looked at the jury the way she looked at teachers, boyfriends, and bosses her whole life, with that carefully crafted vulnerability. "She's my sister," Abby whispered. "We've always shared things. I really thought she was okay with it. She barely ever uses the house. I just wanted my family to have a place to live." Her voice cracked perfectly on cue. "I can't believe she would do this to me." A soft gasp escaped Mom. Dad reached over and patted her knee. It was theater, all of it, but it still made my stomach churn. Then Abby's lawyer leaned in. "Did you ever intend to steal the house?" Abby shook her head vigorously, letting tears fall. "No, I was trying to help my children. I would never steal from my sister. I love her." For a moment, the courtroom felt too small, too warm, too heavy. Mr. Harris glanced at me, his expression steady, almost reassuring. Then he stood. "Your Honor, the defense would like to present evidence." And everything changed. He wheeled over a large monitor and connected a laptop. The screen flickered, and suddenly there was my foyer, the same angle I had watched from my phone that night weeks ago. "First, we'd like to show the jury security footage recorded automatically by cameras installed by Miss Alden." The footage began to play. Abby appeared on screen, confidently unlocking my front door. Behind her, contractors stepped inside with boxes and tools. Mr. Harris didn't look at the jury. He watched Abby. "Notice," he said calmly, "Miss Thompson enters without the owner present or aware. She proceeds to instruct contractors on changes to the home." The audio turned up. "I want the dining room done in silver," Abby said in the video, strolling through the house. "Something modern. And the sofa needs a new upholstery, something with color." In the courtroom, Abby's cheeks flushed bright red. Mom's mouth fell open. Dad's shoulders tightened. But Mr. Harris wasn't done. "We'd now like to play another piece of footage." The screen shifted to a clip from the living room. Abby stood with her phone pressed to her ear. Dad's voice came through the speakers. "Are you sure Marissa said it's okay?" "When we move in," Abby's voice responded, laughing, "the house will be ours." Silence. Heavy, suffocating silence. My mother stopped nodding. My father's jaw dropped. Abby stared at the screen as if hoping it would vanish. Mr. Harris let the words hang in the air before repeating quietly, "When we move in, the house will be ours. Not borrowed, not temporarily shared. Ours." Then came the final blow. The audio recording of my phone call with Abby demanding the fortunes. Her voice filled the courtroom, entitled, sharp, dismissive. "You owe me $4,200. I had contractors fix your boring house. We're moving in whether you like it or not." The jurors exchanged looks. Abby sank lower in her chair, her carefully crafted innocence unraveling under the weight of her own voice. After the evidence, everything moved fast. The lawyers made final statements. The judge gave instructions. The jury filed out. It took them 40 minutes. When they returned, Abby wouldn't look at me. Mom clutched her arm like she thought Abby might faint. The foreperson stood. "We find the defendant guilty." Abby gasped. A real, raw sound. Tears spilled down her cheeks. The judge didn't soften. "Mrs. Thompson, you are sentenced to 2 years probation and ordered to pay $83,000 in restitution to Miss Alden." Mom sobbed. Dad shook his head, eyes filled with disbelief, maybe even shame. Abby collapsed in her seat, mouthing "no" over and over. I didn't move. It wasn't victory, it wasn't satisfaction. It was closure. Afterwards, my parents approached me in the hallway, or tried to. I walked past them, my heels clicking against the tile, their voices fading behind me, like echoes of a life I was finally choosing to leave. I didn't look back. After the trial ended, life didn't snap back into place. It didn't suddenly feel lighter, or triumphant, or healed. Instead, the world felt strangely quiet, like a room after all the shouting has stopped, but the walls still hum with the echo of it. I walked to my car that day with Mr. Harris's congratulations still ringing in my ears, but all I felt was a deep, aching sort of exhaustion, the kind that sinks into your bones. In the weeks that followed, I tried to settle back into normalcy, whatever that meant now. I worked, cooked simple dinners, and ignored the emails my parents sent, paragraphs about forgiveness and family unity, followed by thinly veiled accusations that I had destroyed Abby's life. My mother's messages were emotional and wandering. My father's were clipped, cold, and cutting. I deleted them all. Mr. Harris told me to stay patient. The house, my house, had to remain exactly as Abby left it. The garish silver wallpaper, the neon yellow studio walls, the crooked wine rack. They all had to stay until the court formally closed everything and the documentation was finalized. It was torture, knowing the place I loved was sitting there, violated, waiting. But eventually, nearly 3 months after the verdict, Mr. Harris called. "You're clear," he said. "You can start restoring the house." I didn't cry, but my whole body loosened with relief, as if I'd been holding my breath since the moment Abby first called me on that Tuesday morning. I hired professionals immediately, real professionals, not the bargain bin contractors Abby had dragged in like vandals with toolboxes. They stripped down the metallic wallpaper in the dining room and replaced it with a soft, elegant gray pattern that reminded me of the calm I'd always sought. They restored my sofa to its original upholstery, the warm, cozy fabric I'd spent months saving for. The studio upstairs was repainted a soothing cream color, sunlight settling across it like a quiet blessing each afternoon. When the work was finished, the house didn't just look like it had before. It looked better, stronger, calmer, more mine than it had ever been. I changed the locks, got a new security system, more cameras, more sensors, more control. Not out of fear, but because I wanted absolute ownership of my space and the peace that came with knowing no one could violate it again. I began spending weekends there, sometimes painting in the studio, sometimes sitting on the deck with a cup of tea, watching the lake shimmer beneath the morning sun. The house had always been a refuge. Now it felt like a rebirth. Meanwhile, through my cousin, the only person in the extended family who didn't take sides against me, I heard about Abby's decline. Jacob filed for divorce 1 week after the police escorted Abby out of my house. 1 week. He didn't look back. He pushed for full custody of their kids, and the court granted it. Abby's criminal record had made the judge's decision almost too easy. Jacob remarried quickly, someone he'd known from work, and by all accounts, their home was stable, calm, even happy. My cousin said the kids seemed more relaxed than they'd ever been. Abby, meanwhile, had moved into my parents' attic. She hadn't chosen humility. She'd been forced into it. She sold her car, most of her jewelry, and anything else she could convert to cash. But even that wasn't enough to cover the restitution. She took out a loan that would haunt her for years. To repay it, she worked 3 jobs. Night shift at a supermarket, stocking shelves from midnight to dawn, lunch rush shifts at a diner on weekdays, and weekends at a dry cleaner, tagging clothes until her fingers hurt. My cousin said she looked thinner, paler, tired in a way makeup couldn't cover. Every step, every shift, every sleepless night was a reminder of what she'd tried to steal and what she'd lost. As for my parents, their downfall was quieter, but in some ways more brutal. Their church community, the friends they bragged to, the neighbors they tried to impress, found out about the trial. They saw the security footage, heard the recordings. Word traveled fast. People stopped inviting them to dinners. Committee meetings adjusted schedules without informing them. Old friends shifted away in grocery store aisles, pretending not to see them. My parents, who had always taken pride in being liked, admired, respected, were suddenly alone. My cousin told me that Dad rarely left the house anymore. Mom tried to keep up appearances, but the strain showed in every photo I saw, every update I heard. They hadn't just chosen the wrong daughter to protect. They'd chosen wrong for 34 years. I didn't feel vindicated. I didn't feel triumphant. Mostly I felt free. About 6 months after the trial, I was shopping late one night, close to 10 p.m., at the supermarket near my Reno apartment. I needed coffee and bread for the next morning. I wasn't thinking about Abby or my parents. I wasn't thinking about the trial. I was just tired, ready to go home. Then I turned down an aisle and froze. Abby was there, wearing a blue employee vest, stacking boxes of cereal onto a shelf. Her hair was tied back in a messy ponytail, strands falling out. She looked so small, not physically, but spiritually. Like life had worn her down to the edges. She saw me the same moment I saw her. For 3 long seconds, we just stared. Her eyes were hollow, not angry, not pleading, just empty. The kind of emptiness that comes from hitting the bottom of something you thought you'd never have to face. I expected her to say something, maybe to yell, maybe to cry, maybe to throw accusations at me. She was always good at that. But she didn't speak. She didn't move. She just turned away and continued stocking the shelf. Box after box after box. I stood there a moment longer, then walked away. On the drive home, I tried to identify what I felt. Was it pity? Satisfaction? Anger? Guilt? But there was nothing. Just a quiet recognition that our lives had diverged completely, hers spiraling downward into the consequences she'd earned, mine finally moving forward. Now, when I spend weekends at the lake, breathing in the stillness, touching the smooth walls that no longer carry someone else's imprint, I feel a peace I didn't know was possible. My job is going well. I got promoted to senior analyst. My boss says I seem sharper, more focused. Maybe that's what happens when you finally cut out the people who drain you. I've made new friends through a hiking group by the lake. They know me only as Marissa, the woman who loves the outdoors, who paints on weekends, who makes terrible spreadsheet jokes. They don't know about Abby, or the trial, or the years of being the afterthought. They just know me as I am now. And that's enough. People like to say family is everything, but I've learned something different. Family is supposed to honor your boundaries. Family is supposed to respect your space. Family is not entitled to your life simply because of blood. I spent 34 years being the responsible one, the forgiving one, the invisible one. I'm not that woman anymore. Now I'm simply Marissa, the woman with a beautiful house on Lake Tahoe, the woman who chose herself, the woman who built peace out of the wreckage someone else made. And I sleep better than I ever have. My sister works 3 jobs in my parents' attic. My parents sit alone in a silence they built for themselves. And I, finally, fully, am free.